When people hear salt from Utah, the first thing they think of is the Great Salt Lake. That's the first thing that pops into their mind. Little do they know that 2 hours south of the Great Salt Lake, trapped deep within the earth, trapped well away from pollution, well away from surface toxins, is this pristine salt deposit that was serendipitously underneath my grandfather's farm.
It wasn't intentional originally. In the late 1950s, the drought here was so bad that there wasn't enough water to irrigate the crops. So as Dad and Lamar were looking for something to do to feed the kids, they simply took a bulldozer and bulldozed the cornfield out of the way, and 30 feet below where the corn was planted, we hit salt.
And at the time, they didn't know what to call it. So they sat around as a group and said, you know, it's not half salt, it's not fake salt, it's not processed salt, it's just real salt. Salt is seen as this negative thing, you know, that salt's the next white poison, which makes it very unfortunate, because when somebody stands up on TV and says, hey, salt is bad for you, you need to eat less salt, they're right, because the salt they're talking about, when they say salt, they're meaning this processed, this white, demineralized chemical substance full of anti-caking agents that, yeah, you probably should eat less of. Salt in nature occurs with potassium chloride, magnesium chloride, all these complex chlorides. The body doesn't, in order for the body to digest sodium, it requires potassium and magnesium, these other electrolytes. So if the salt contains those other electrolytes, it helps balance out the sodium that's there, so the body's able to absorb it more. Unfortunately, salt's kind of gotten a bad rap in the last 100 years or so, but yet you go to the hospital and the first thing they do is they give you an IV of saline solution, which is salt water.
To balance you.
Right, so you really can't overdose on salt if it's in the right form. Much like you can overdose on beta-carotene, but you'd have a tough time overdosing on carrots.
Sure. So because it's in its natural form, it's better for your body to ingest overall.
Right.
But the thing that makes it so unique is the fact that it has these 60 trace minerals in the form that they were in when nature laid it down.
Most of your salt companies today will extract these other trace minerals. Potassium chloride is very valuable, so is magnesium chloride. So they'll pull out the other minerals until you're left with pure sodium and chloride.
Back in the 1930s, there was a nutritionist who determined that the ratio or balance of sodium to minerals is the same in natural seawater as in the human blood. That's what gave rise to the demand for sea salt. But it didn't take industry long to realize that they could take that sea water, they could leach off the minerals, and now with only the sodium left, legally, they could still sell it as sea salt.
Any salt, regardless of how it's produced, can be defined as sea salt because it comes from a seabed at one point. Because of that, today sea salt doesn't mean anything. And if you go to a health food store, you'll see that, and you can find a sea salt on the shelf here and a traditional table salt here. And if you look at the labels on both of those, there can be more chemicals in your sea salt than there is in the table salt you may have grown up, you know, being around. We're delighted to have 1 Degree Organic customers eating RealSalt in the breads and cereals and other products that 1 Degree makes, because I think it connects the people to the actual product. Most of your salt companies come out and by the time it hits the shaker, it doesn't resemble anything where the source or where it came from. Or with our product, we are very open. We want people to know our story. We want people to see where their salt comes from, see what we don't do to it, which is more important than what we do to it.
From the point of this salt being in the deposit in rock form, the entire operation is we crush it and screen it. You could do the whole process with the hammer out of your toolbox and the screen out of your kitchen window.
There's no heating, there's no bleaching. It comes right out of the ground, right into a bag, and then right into their bread. And there's no funny steps. It's just right from the ground, right into their bread, the way salt was meant to be savored.